All right. Are there things that narcissists could do to change their behavior? Well, yeah. And it has happened. Actually, I've met them. There are actually wonderful people that I've met who say that they used to be horrible narcissists, like awful people who've had like the world cave in on them, and they really have had to take a look at themselves and change. And it does happen sometimes. People who have said that they were the worst people in the world and found themselves in situations where, they said everything changed for them. I would say that it can happen. It doesn't happen that often. And for most of you who are out there, I would say don't sit around and go, yeah, maybe my narcissist, whoever it is that I'm dealing with, can change and let me hold out hope. And the reason why I say that is because for most of you, you're in situations where it literally is sucking your soul to the point where it's probably affecting your health and affecting everything about you. And when you just really feel like you just no longer can function or breathe, and I always say, like, the soul knows, it is just not serving you anymore, whether it's a business relationship or a personal relationship or even a family member. You just have to create those boundaries and just cut it. And it's just not serving you anymore. So I'm just saying that sometimes you just have to make a decision that it's just not for you. But be that as it may, there are some things that narcissists could do to change their behavior. And I'm going to give you what the 10 things are. And number one is, obviously, just like anything, they're going to have to recognize that there's an issue. And I'm seeing this from the perspective of a person who helps people in negotiations and helps people communicate in these settings. And so in any situations when people have to communicate with each other, they're going to have to recognize that there's an issue. So number one is recognize there's an issue. I mean, if they don't think there's a problem, then there's a fundamental flaw in this whole thing. So number one is they're going to have to recognize there's a problem in the first place. And then number two, they're going to have to do something about it, right? This is something that they're going to have to do on a professional level, because there's a deep-seated something that's going on within them, deep-seated traumas, deep-seated issues internally, where, something had happened to them when they were children. And this is something that has been going on with them for a very, very long time. And so this is very, very ingrained. Deep grooves have been layered on for many, many years that will have to be handled and processed in a way that most of the time they don't think they can do on their own. So this is something that'll have to happen with professional help. So recognize there's an issue. Number two, seek professional help. So number three is, once they've done those number one and number two, they're going to have to then start taking responsibility for their actions. I mean, sure, they can sit around and say, hey, I had horrible parents or whatever it is that happened to them in their childhood. But then, hey, I'm an adult now, so now I'm going to have to take responsibility for my actions. So one is recognize there's an issue. Two, seek professional help. Number three is, now I got to start taking responsibility for my actions. So number three is they will have to start taking responsibility. Number four is they're going to have to now start learning, what does it look like to be a person who has compassion, a person who has empathy. So number four is learn key phrases. Learn key phrases. How do I start to speak? What does it look like to have the words coming out of their mouths? What do they start to say? And number five is something similar. Certain behaviors. I think that they need to start saying the phrases. And what does a person look like that is a person of compassion, a person of empathy. You know, they're retraining themselves to be the type of person that you wanted them to be in the first place. It takes a lot. It takes a lot. And while they're undoing themselves and being this person, if you are staying with them, there's going to be some need for you to practice a lot of self-care while you're dealing with this narcissist. And I do have a video on self-care to deal with narcissists. And, you know, while you're with this person, I would definitely recommend that you check out that video. And if you're dealing with a narcissist right now, you should check out that video anyway. And, you know, it's hard. It's very hard. So I want you to put in the comments right now, I can do this, because you can do this. You absolutely can do this. If you are with a narcissist right now, I would just definitely say, as I said in the beginning, probably not the best thing for you to stay at this point. Maybe create an exit plan and not sit around and go, I think this person might change. Okay, so we've done numbers 1 through 5. Let's go to number 6. The next thing that they're going to have to do is learn to recognize when they are falling back into their old patterns. Learn to recognize when they're using their dominant behaviors, their manipulative behaviors, going back into those old patterns of whatever it was that they were doing in the first place, being passive aggressive, light, whatever their narcissistic behaviors were in the past. They're going to have to recognize, I'm going back into that. And then stop themselves. And what can they do to substitute their new behaviors, their healthy behaviors? What does it look like? Remember, go back to the new behaviors of a person who is healthy and all of that, the new things that they're learning. Back to numbers 4 and 5. And so number 7 is learn how to be mindful. Learn how to be mindful of their words and their behaviors and their actions. So that's number 7. Number 8 is learn how to love themselves. These are people who've been living double lives, feeling very small inside, a lot of self-hatred. You know, narcissists don't have any feeling of inner value, a lot of inner hatred. That's why they try to layer on all that external value through that outer prestige and adulation and control and all, because they don't have any sense of inner value. So learning how to love themselves, learning how to feel whole and complete, learning how to harmonize that feeling of feeling whole and complete inside, so that outside they don't feel like they have to do those things. You know, that inner sense of peace, that inner sense of wholeness. That's what they really need to strive for. That whole world calms down for them, learning that. Number 9 is learning how to heal that inner trauma, doing the therapy, doing the work, learning how to having that compassion for themselves. That's a lot of work. It's going to take a ton of work on their part. And so number 10 is really committing to doing the work, committing to being the better person and following through and sticking to it. It's a lot of work for them. Fed up with narcissists walking all over you? Sick of everyone believing their lies while you're paying through the nose in attorney's fees? What if you could hold all the cards for a change? Hey, I'm Rebecca Zung. I'm a top 1% trial attorney, a USA Today bestselling author, and I've spent my entire career helping people slay narcissists in negotiations, most recently through my proven slay method. What if your suffering could become your superpower? Imagine turning all that pain into power, not just for you, but for others too. This is your chance to take back control. You can finally win. Become a high conflict negotiation certified coach. Help others while transforming your own life and do good for the world. This is your chance. Go to RebeccaZung.com/apply, and I'll show you how to turn the tables for good starting today. Well, there's a couple things I want to talk to you about. So you start off with your story of how you felt when you were 13 years old.
Yeah.
And that you told your mom that you didn't even want to live anymore, and that scared your mom to death. So I want you, and so I want you to tell that story. And then you also talk about narcissists in the book a little bit.
I do.
So I want you to talk about that a little bit too.
I was treading in the ultimate experts territory here. I'm like, you're the ultimate expert. So
I want you to talk about that. And then I want to get to tune, because I love that acronym as well.
Okay.
So that, because I'd love to get to that. And I also love the where you talk about, Gandhi, don't let anyone, walk through your mind, so I want to get to that. So talk about how you struggled with depression, and you talked, I love the story that you open with at the beginning of the book. Talk about that.
Yeah, I'm in 8th grade, and I tell my mom that I'm depressed and I want to kill myself. And she just starts screaming, going crazy. What? You want to kill yourself? What are you talking about? Why are you saying that? I just started freaking out. And she was freaking out so much. My mom passed away at the age of 59. So I can imagine her and visualize her right now being a kid and what she was like saying that. And I was so concerned about my mom freaking out. I was like, mom, it's okay. It's okay. I'll be fine. I'll be fine. And so I was there spending my time making my mom feel better instead of dealing with what I was going through. And I even said, maybe that's why all these years later, my brother says he eats his feelings. And so, I think I've worked through a lot of that in my life. And again, my mom was a very loving mom. My dad was a very loving dad. My biological father left when I was a year old. He was a psychotherapist, actually, a social worker. And I believe still is. We don't have a relationship, but it's interesting how you go through your life, and like, I'm really good at analyzing and psychology and all that. So I must have that from a genetic standpoint. But yeah, I struggled as a kid like that. And I struggled in my 20s, and I struggled at 31 years old with depression, anxiety, and so much fear and angst in my stomach that I felt like I was just going to die every single day. Every day, I felt like I was just dying, a slow death. And I was miserable. And Catherine, my wife, she had enough of my negativity. And she said, I love you, but I'm not going to spend my life with someone who is so negative and miserable all the time. And I think if I was just depressed, that would have been fine. She would have supported me. But I think the fact that I was blaming her for why my life was so bad, and I was blaming her for not living up to my dreams, I think that was the big challenge. And so I had to change. And that began this journey of working to become a more positive person. And I've done everything in this book. And that's how I know it works. Like, I really have done a lot of this. And I've been teaching this. I've been teaching this since 2007. A lot of the things that I wrote about in the book. Now, I didn't know why it worked back then. The One Truth is all about how to do it, why to do it, and why it works and how it works. It's like the how to, which helps it all make sense, which is more powerful when you understand it. So I wish I knew then, but I knew I was doing it. And as I was doing it, I realized my whole life has been a quest to get better myself and then help other people get better on their journey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, you talk about this oneness and separateness, and you talk about the narcissist, which is a person who is completely separate.
Yes. So everything comes down to oneness and separateness. For instance, the word integrity comes from the word integer, which means whole and complete. So a leader with integrity has wholeness, completeness. They have oneness. They are aligned. There's no gap in their character. There's no gap in who they are and what they say. Now we move to a narcissist. A narcissist actually feels separate. And because they feel separate, they focus on self and themselves and protecting themselves instead of others. Now, we know that most narcissists are the way they are because they've dealt with some trauma, some painful experience in their past that have caused a separation, a wound, a hole in their soul. Now, this wound manifests itself actually neurologically, because a narcissist's brain, they will actually cut off other parts of their brain if you study them neurologically. And so there's actually a protective mechanism where they cut off other parts and they separate themselves even neurologically.
Yeah.
And so they don't feel whole. They don't feel like they're part of a connected team. They don't feel like they're part of others or care about others. And because you don't care about others, right, you then are more often mean to others, or you see others as an object, not as someone who is like you. You don't see them as one with you. So you don't
Mhm.
care about them. That's why narcissists don't care about anyone else, because they don't even see someone else as mattering. They matter. And that's all that matters. And
Right.
so that's really big. As you know, you've studied narcissists. You're the expert on narcissists. And
Right.
so this really makes me understand narcissists in a new way. And I think will help other people understand them, that they feel separate. And that's why they are. Now, also, you know this, narcissists also suffer, majority of them, from other mental health disorders, isolation, feelings of disconnection,
Right.
bipolar, right? A lot of sadness, melancholy. Why is that? Because people with mental health disorders, when you move from oneness to separateness, you move from positive to negative. This is huge. It sounds simple, but it's profound. You move from oneness to separateness, you move from positive to negative. The more you move towards separateness, the more negative thoughts you have,
Sure.
the more depression you have. And why is that? We can't go into this now, but that's the whole idea of the book, is the brain is an antenna. Read the book, you'll understand. You're either tuning into the positive or negative.
Yeah.
Rebecca, do you think, and you're the expert on this, do you think, because I've been thinking a lot about this, can we move the narcissist from separateness to oneness? Can we help them become more whole? Have you seen a narcissist heal like anybody who's suffered a mental health disorder? Can they heal and find more wholeness in life, in their life, and better relationships?
Well, see, this is the thing. I just did all the research on this in my book, and the
Yeah.
problem is that when their brains were bathed in all these chemicals
Yes.
as a child, and I told you about this, that I had done this research,
Yep.
so the fight or flight was continuous during their childhood.
Yep.
Right. And so the limbic system part of their brain sustained emotional damage
Yep.
during childhood, and so there was arrested development during childhood. And
Right.
so they're in this constant kind of starvation mode,
Yep.
basically.
Yep.
And so the problem is that when they are presented with stimuli in adulthood that cause them to feel like they need to go back into that fight or flight mode, then they're basically in where they feel like they need to be um you know basically they back into that mode again, where
Right.
so I don't know that they can ever be healed. I just don't know,
Right.
because the problem is they would have to be self-aware. They would have to go, I need to be healed. I need to be healed. And I don't know that they're ever going to um to do that. And most of the mental health professionals that I have ever interviewed have said they're not willing to take that step. They're not willing to take that leap.
It
So
goes
I
to the
don't know.
it goes to the fact that if the brain is an antenna and the brain antenna is damaged in some capacity and
Yeah.
not working the way it's supposed to work from our brain standpoint, if it's not working, then it's going to be hard for them to tune into any emotional feelings of love or empathy or support, because they are in such a protective mode and a flight, fight, response mode. But I do believe this. I do believe this. I know healing can take place at all levels. We know the body can heal. We know broken bones can heal. We actually know the brain can actually heal from traumatic brain injuries, right? It can heal. So I do believe maybe the future is going to be, can we figure out a way, again, just like, again, I'm not advocating for them, but I've been doing research on psychedelics, and what they found with some psychedelics is
I'd like to think of
yeah,
psychedelics, maybe. Yeah. I,
yeah,
I
people with
yes,
severe,
maybe with
yeah,
psychedelics.
PTSD,
Yes.
yeah, PTSD, trauma, people with severe, they've had some success where it lights up a lot of different parts of the brain
Yes.
when you're doing that, which actually causes the antenna to then connect to a different level of
Yes.
consciousness. And then what's happening is I'm pretty sure they're finding some sense of oneness in that experience. And that's why they feel feelings of love that they never felt before.
Yes,
And from
maybe
that,
with psychedelics, yes.
right, a
But they
healing
would
could,
have to go to take the psychedelics. They'd
right.
have to want to do that. They'd have
Yeah.
to want to take that healing, because otherwise they're in such survival mode
Right.
all the
They don't
time.
even think, yeah, they don't even think someone needs help. It's almost like when I think of someone with schizophrenia, there have been some healing cases of that. I talked to Chris Palmer. He's the author of Brain Energy. We had some great conversations on that. And they have healed some schizophrenics with a ketogenic diet even. Again, getting the brain antenna working more correctly. I do believe that even with schizophrenics, like a lot of times their brains are so damaged and so tuned into these different frequencies. They're hearing multiple voices and so forth from the consciousness, which I talk about, in the book a little bit. As they're doing that, that's why it's hard, because they don't even realize they need help. Exactly. They don't even realize they need to change, because they're not even aware of the ability to change, because they're so far, gone in some ways. Their brain is.
It's almost like autism or something in a
way. I thought like, I know, because autistic, but again, autism, I'm even hearing more and more modalities will be able to at some point find healing, because what autism is caused initially by a brain injury. There's some kind of brain injury that happens at that level. So I do believe, again, I'm a spiritual person. I believe healing can take place in a moment. I believe somehow, some way there's a spiritual healing that could take place. And if we could get them to actually pray, if we can get them to pray every day, I talked to Professor Newberg. He is the top researcher in neurotheology, how meditation affects the brain, how prayer affects the brain of different religions, not just Christianity, but all different religions. And he's studying this. What you find is that actually there's a psychedelic kind of impact. I'm not necessarily thinking we need psychedelics if we can actually tune into prayer and meditation and the things I talk about in the book. I do believe over time it could renew the mind, create more neurosynapses connections, and start to create healing in the brain. So that's my hope and my belief. Do I know that? For sure, no. Is it a theory? Yes. But guess what? Hey, science, go test the theory. Start looking in this direction for healing to take place. And I think they should.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I would love to think so. And I think that sometimes when there are certain things that happen in their lives, like, that cause them cause a collapse, because that so many things happen, maybe, yeah. I've talked to people that, have said to me, I used to be a narcissist, but then everything happened to me. My wife left me, my business collapsed, all of that caused me to have to look at everything in my life. And then, now I'm no longer a narcissist because I had to become self-aware.
It's like the degree, like it really depends on the degree. Like how bad is the narcissism? Is it real? Are you so far gone? There's no way, but are you at a certain level? You can come back, just like certain levels of schizophrenia and so forth, and brain injury. I do believe there's, again, a certain degree of what you can come back from. And I believe that this is hope. Like I hope people read the book at any level of their wound, of any level of their trauma, wherever you are on the journey. Reading this book will help you heal on the journey, and tuning into, as you said, you wanted to talk about, is part of the healing process.
It seems like every celebrity has access to GLP-1s these days, but what about the rest of us? Now you don't need to be rich or famous to access personalized, tailored weight loss solutions just for you. Through Hers, you can take control of your health. Hers is changing women's healthcare by providing access to holistic weight loss solutions, including GLP-1 treatments with the same active ingredients as Ozempic and Wegovy, oral medication kits, and more. You'll connect with a medical provider who will develop a plan based on your needs. And if prescribed, your medication is included as part of a doctor-designed weight loss program, complete with ongoing care, online support, all at no additional cost. Plans start at just $199 a month with a 12-month subscription, paid up front, and your treatment ships directly to your door. So if you've been struggling with weight loss and you want to find the right solution just for you, start your free online visit today at forhers.com/negotiate. That's forhers.com/negotiate for your personalized weight loss treatment options. Hers is not available everywhere. Compounded programs are not FDA approved or verified for safety, effectiveness, or quality. Prescription required. Restrictions apply. Wegovy and Ozempic are not compounded. All right. So yes, you cannot get a narcissist to actually change their personality, but you can get them to change how they will deal and interact with you. And I'm going to give you 6 ways to get them to change in how they deal and interact with you in this video. So stay tuned and watch all the way to the end so that you can see what I mean. What I mean is they've been conditioning you from the beginning. You have been dealing with them. They've been love bombing you. Now, this is whether you're in a romantic relationship, a business relationship, even a family relationship. Even if you've known them forever, they condition you. They expect you to act in a certain way. So what you have to do is condition them back. You have to let them know, hey, this ain't how it's going to go anymore. There's a new game in town. Things are changing. Things are shifting. And the way that we've had a paradigm, the way things have gone before, ain't the way it's going to be anymore. So you're going to have to change. And so you're basically reconditioning them back. And the way I explain it and the way I want you to understand this is that it's the same as if you are dealing with a toddler. The same as if you're dealing with a 2-year-old who's having a tantrum. When 2-year-olds have tantrums and they're conditioning their parents, basically, the parents see the 2-year-old having a tantrum on the floor, right? And so for those of you who've had 2-year-olds, you know what I mean. What happens is the 2-year-old wants something. Let's say it's a bottle. And the 2-year-old is saying, I want that bottle. And the parents are going, nope, you don't get the bottle anymore. You have to use the sippy cup or whatever it is. The 2-year-old's like, I want the bottle. And so what happens is if the parents give in to that tantrum, then the next time the 2-year-old just goes, you know what? It worked last time. So next time I'm just going to scream louder. I'm just going to scream longer. I'm going to kick my heels. I'm going to flail my arms. I'm going to throw things. I'm going to become even more horrible. I'm going to make their lives miserable. I'm going to embarrass them in stores, whatever it is I need to do so that they will have to give in to me because I want that bottle. I want what I want right now. And then the parents go, oh my God, I can't take this. There's the bottle. And that's what's going on with narcissists. So until like those parents just go, you know what, I'm not going to do that anymore. The kid goes, you know what, apparently they're not giving in. I'm going to have to just give up on this. I'll just have to behave. I'll just have to, deal with it, take the sippy cup, and they finally just give up. But guess what? They're the worst right before they decide to give up. And that's what it is with narcissists as well. So you're basically, doing the same thing. You're reconditioning them. Do they change inherently? No, because they're not actually 2-year-olds. They're actually adults. But you are conditioning them to let them know there's a new game in town. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you these tips to let you know how to recondition them. Are you going to change them into loving people who have empathy, who now know how to care for people and become amazing human beings who no, you're not actually changing the narcissist spots, but you're changing them into how they will, treat you, respect you, or they're going to just get out of your life. All right. So here's what you're going to do. I'm going to give you 6 tips. Got it? Number 1, you're going to understand narcissism. You are going to start really getting into, that's why you're watching this channel. That's why you're reading the books. That's why you are getting all the knowledge that you possibly can, because honestly, the more you understand, the more you dig in, the more you really start powerfully understanding everything you can about narcissism, the different types of narcissism, the traits of narcissism, the traits of people that they target, you start to realize, hey, this ain't me. This is them. I can't take this personally. This is something that's, happens to people when they were young. And you start to realize, wow, this is something that, took place. And by the way, as I say all the time, narcissists didn't attach themselves to you because you had so little value. They attached themselves to you because you had so much value. They like sources of supply that have a lot of value. That's why they liked you in the first place, even though they gaslit you into believing you had no value. Understand narcissism. That's number one. Number two, set those boundaries. I always say, step one, don't run. Set boundaries. Obviously get away from them, but you're not running away. You're setting boundaries. The more you have fear, the more they smell it in the water. They're like sharks looking for that blood. And once they see that blood, they go for that. They go for that jugular. They know how to instill that in you. Set boundaries and stick to those boundaries. And then number three is, don't be afraid of them. Don't be afraid to confront them. Don't be afraid of them. They respect people who aren't afraid of them. That's the only type of person that they actually respect. You can't have fear. I started to allude to that earlier, but as soon as you have fear, they read that, and then that gives them supply. Your fear actually feeds that. They get off on that. They get a high on that. That keeps them around. That keeps them coming back. They enjoy that. Most people don't want people to be afraid of them. That doesn't give them joy. It gives them joy. You don't want that. And the more you can say, I'm not afraid of this person. They're just a small little, they're actually more afraid of you than you are of them. And the more you can see that, the more you can uncover that, the more you peel back those onion layers and see that, the more you will understand that. So no fear. And I want you to put that in the comments right now. No fear. So don't be afraid. Don't be afraid of them. Don't be afraid to confront them. Don't be afraid to assert yourself. Assert what's fair. Assert what's best for you. Number four is related to that, and that is hold them accountable. Hold them accountable for their behavior. If you're in litigation and they don't do something that they're supposed to do, they don't provide discovery that they're supposed to provide, file a motion to compel, they violate a court order, file a motion, let the court know, make the court enforce that court order, ask for sanctions if you need to, if that's something that's available for that. Ask for attorney's fees if you can. Whatever you can do it. Don't sit by and go, well, I don't want to. I don't want to be the bad guy. I don't want to, hurt them. The more you do that, the more they get away with things, and you're not holding them accountable. And then they think that they are, still have some kind of power over you, some kind of control over you. And that's not okay. That's number four. Number five is reward positive behavior. When they act the way you want them to, recognize that. Say, great job, or I'm glad you're using the parenting app like you're supposed to, or whatever it is that they're supposed to do. They do like their ego stroked, so if you fluff up their ego, it's a good thing. I know you don't want to do it, I know you don't enjoy those kinds of things, but, I always say fluff for favor, vomit later, because it helps you to ethically manipulate the manipulator, and it helps you to get some things that you want down the road if, Don't do it just to do it to get some things that you want, right? So reward positive behavior if it's going to help you. And then number 6 is the final thing, and that is to totally ignore when they are trying to bait you. This is so important. Probably the most important. This is something they totally get off on, is trying to bait you. And they will try to do this constantly in a myriad of different ways, probably infinite ways, thousands and thousands and thousands of ways. It will go on forever, as long as you allow it to. I can't even name the number of different ways that they will continue to try to bait you. But, and depending on the type of narcissist you're dealing with, the way they bait is also infinite as well. But, they will constantly try to bait you. The more you can find yourself ignoring it, rising above, smiling through it, the better it will be for you, because, that gives them narcissistic supply. It also gives them things that they can use against you as well. The more you react to it, remember, everything you put your hand to is a potential trial exhibit as well. So make sure that you don't give them any kind of things that they can use against you either, by the way. That doesn't help you at all. I know it's really hard. I know it's extremely difficult, especially, if you've been traumatized by them for years and years and years. Definitely get the help and support that you need. I'll admit it, I'm that person. I'm the one the night before a birthday, an anniversary, or any kind of special occasion, I'm frantically searching the aisles for the right card, and one that doesn't seem kind of corny or cringeworthy. You know the struggle, right? But then I found Moonpig. It's a total game changer. They have tons of adorable, funny, even heartfelt designs ready to go, and you can even personalize them, which is super cool. You can even upload your favorite photos or tweak the text to make it uniquely you. And they'll even suggest clever messages if you're feeling stuck. Oh, and no more forgetting birthdays or scrambling for addresses. Moonpig lets you save everything in one place and even sends you reminders. Plus, they've got the opportunity to upload gift cards from all your favorite places like Sephora or Starbucks, so you can really nail that perfect gift vibe. Once you've designed your card, they'll even mail it for you, or if you want to hand deliver it, they'll send it to you with a cool envelope. So guess what? This is your chance. Your first card is totally free. Just use the code FREE and go to moonpig.com/US/negotiate. Seriously, stop stressing and start impressing. Make someone's day with Moonpig. Try it right now.
Now, I want to ask you about confronting someone. And again, guys, there's degrees of narcissism. There's degrees of being self-centered, degrees of ego. We all have a little bit of it, all the way to this point where it's not really healthy. And we're going to talk in a minute, by the way, we're going to talk about how to get what you want regardless of who you're interacting with. But what would your recommendation be about you are interacting with someone who is behaving and acting out in a way that doesn't serve them or you, business or personal? Is there any upside in confronting a narcissist directly about their behavior, or do you believe that that's completely useless use of energy and words?
Well, I mean, there's no upside to, going up to them and saying you're a narcissist. And
I'm referring more about their behavior. Hey, listen, this thing you're doing here, and her doesn't serve you or I. Or if you've already identified them as somebody who's a narcissist, are they not going to own it in any way, shape, or form anyways?
No, you're not going to get them to say, you're right, I'm so sorry, blah, blah, blah. You're totally wasting your breath and your energy by trying to get them to do that. You might as well, go pound sand or whatever. I mean, I
think this is important, Rebecca, just because I think people are constantly doing this with people in their lives that are this way, like, hey, listen, just change this. And then what they like to do is they like to turn the lens and go, but you, and you. So that's the other part I wanted to ask you. They start sending you a list of the 18 things you're doing wrong. How do you recommend you reply or respond to somebody who's got that personality type, who's then sort of, I wouldn't call it attacking, but turning the lens onto you? Do you recommend you reply specifically to all the things they're saying you're doing wrong? Or how would you best reply to somebody, business or personal?
I mean, what I recommend is, you know, a lot of times I say, you know, you want to reply in a way that's very, very, very specific. So, for example, they've sent a very, very long email, and a lot of times it's calculated to trigger you in a certain way. And you know, it might be 18 pages long, and there may be one line in there that you have to respond to, like, you know, what time are we going to meet on Wednesday or something like that. And that's actually, when you distill it down, that's the only thing you actually need to respond to. And so you can, and a lot of times people are like, but I need to respond to it because I don't want the judge to be seeing this. I don't want this to be used down the road in court. I don't want this to be some trial exhibit. I need to defend myself, you know, all that sort of thing. So what I will say is, you can respond with something like this. Thank you for your email. I am in receipt of it. I deny all of the allegations herein, and we can meet at 3 p.m. on Wednesday. Sincerely.
That's it. So reply to the smallest possible, most necessitated item in there, whether that's personal, email, legal, business, or otherwise. That's your advice.
I've received it. I deny it. Here's, you know, the only other thing I need to respond to.
Really good. All right. So that's dealing with them. Now let's talk about dealing with our lives. So the first thing you wrote was about, you know, negotiating as if you matter. And so I want to talk about now about negotiating our lives and getting what we want in life, because that's ultimately why everybody's listening to my show, right? They want more happiness, more money, more success, more peace of mind, more whatever it might be. So a broad question to begin with: what are some of the keys you believe in life to negotiating the life that you want? What are some of the keys you would suggest?
The best lessons that I ever learned myself is I learned this from one of my the main business coach that I've had, who's now become one of my best friends. She taught me something. I'm going to tell you what the lesson is, and I'm going to tell you what the story was. Okay. She taught me that people will think what you tell them to think.
Yes.
And I'm going to tell you the story of how she taught me this. And it's actually a great lesson for negotiating, but it's also a great lesson for life. So what happened was, I had been practicing law for about 8 years. And then I left the practice of law for about 2 years to go be a financial advisor, wealth advisor. I spent 2 years with Morgan Stanley. I got my Series 7, my 66. And I thought, oh, I'll have an easier lifestyle. I had a little child at the time. My daughter, who's now 19, was, you know, young. And I was like, oh, you know, I'll have a better hours, which, you know, didn't really work out that way. Right. So after about 2 years, a friend of mine was leaving her law practice and she was moving out of the area. And she said, I've got these clients. If you want, you can take over my client base and start your own practice. So I was like, okay, well, people are not going to be dropping law practices in my lap on a regular basis. I'm taking, you know, this opportunity. So I decided to take over this law practice. And I'm talking to my business coach. And I was like, the people in this town are going to think I am such a flake. Like, you know, this girl's a lawyer. Now she's a financial advisor. Now she's back to being a lawyer. Like, this girl does not know what she wants. And my business coach said, people will think what you tell them to think.
So true.
And she said, you can tell them to think that you're a flake and you don't know what you want. Or you can tell them to think that you're the only lawyer that has a financial background. So you are actually more qualified than any of the other lawyers
Very good.
in town because, you know, you've got this financial background, and what other family law attorney has that?
So good.
And
So
I
good.
was like, oh, yeah, I guess I could do that. And so I started to kind of hold myself out as that. And I can't tell you how many people ended up hiring me because that's how I held myself out.
I love this. I have to tell you something. I have to acknowledge something when like wisdom is preached. So I that's brilliant. And just last night I was mentoring, I have one of the business I'm affiliated with was a financial firm. I was mentoring a very young guy last night. And I told him, I just want to second what you said. I said, listen, most people are busy with their own lives. You can create the story. And if you tell them what to believe, they're going to believe it 98% of the time. I said, I learned this because later in my career, I ended up working with a series of doctors. And the doctor said to me, he said, Ed, listen, when you're dealing with doctors, it's different than dealing with other clients. We're really busy. We just want you to tell us what we need to do, what we need to think, and let us do it so we can go back to working with our patients. And I said, really, you want me to he goes, tell us and ask us simultaneously. Say things like, obviously we need to take these steps. And you create the frame, pre-frame what you're going to tell me. Tell me what this means, then mean it. And then when you're done, tell me what you just told me and what it meant. So pre-frame, frame it, and then post-frame it. So I started to do it, and everyone was buying. And I said to him about 6 months later, I said, you know what I found out? It's not just doctors, it's everybody. I should have been doing this the entire time with everything in my life. Pre-framing what this means for everybody, then framing it. And then when I'm done saying, this is what you just heard and what it meant. And you create the meaning. And so this is something for if you get no lesson out of this entire TV show, what Rebecca just told you is absolute truth on how to get what you want in your life. It's key number one in your life. Let me ask you about this number two. When I listen to you and I've watched your content, so Rebecca's got content that's very diverse. She's got stuff on divorce. She's got stuff on negotiation. She's got stuff on narcissism. She's also been a TV personality, which she'll get interviewed when a high profile person's going through something. And so she's learned to communicate in different settings, one-on-one, financial, courtroom, television, podcast. You're an unbelievable communicator. How much of persuasion for you has just been your personal certainty level, just actual certainty in the way you deliver a message? Are you conscious of that? Or was that just sort of like a natural gift you had when you started practicing law?
My father used to say, my father was from China, actually, and he came over here when he was 14, and he went to Columbia University undergrad and medical school. And, you know, he was the only Chinese guy actually in those days. And, you know, it was a big deal. And he used to say to me, whatever you say it with authority and people will believe you. And he just kind of, you know, groomed me that way. Like, even if you don't know the answer, don't lie. Just say, I don't know. I will get you the answer, but you say it with authority. Like, and so I don't know. I just think that he was, and even as a girl, like he just was like always believed in me in that way. And I was really, really fortunate to have a father who was, who believed in me in that way.
I think there's things, Rebecca, I think some people, I watch this on my show all the time. It's fascinating to me that certain people are great at something and they're almost unaware of their greatness at it. And I think this is the case with you. You have a massive degree of certainty when you communicate. It's almost like you have a style when you speak. It's almost like, and I mean this is a compliment. There's a way in which you deliver a message. My audience is going to nod when I say this. You have a style of communicating. It's almost like there's a tone to it that you're almost an idiot if you don't believe what I'm saying right now. That's almost what it sounds like. It's that depth of certainty. It's not arrogance. It's not condescending, but it's an expression of certainty that's almost like you just don't get it if you don't agree with me. That's what it sounds like.
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, I certainly haven't always felt that way, though. I mean, you know, for people that have followed me, you know, they know that I've certainly had my share of, you know, stumbles in my life. You know, I got married at 19 the first time. I had 3 kids by the time I was 22. I dropped out of college. I went, I got divorced. I went back to law school at night. I met my husband, my current husband in law school. I got married again. I had another child. I have 4 kids, so I certainly I feel like I've had my share of bootstrapping and getting, where I need to be. I was bullied as a kid for being half Asian. I talk a lot about that. I've had to deal with these narcissists in my life. And, I definitely I've tried to be as authentic as I can so that people understand that it hasn't always come easy for me. I've definitely had to deal with my own struggles for sure. Yeah. Because I want people to understand, I'm a human being too. And if I could do it, anyone can do it.
It's amazing what you've accomplished. I mean, everyone just flew by, but this is a woman who's married at 19, 3 kids, drops out of school. And you fast forward, Bob Shapiro writes the foreword to her book, one of the most powerful, influential attorneys of all time. I've met Bob a few times, founded LegalZoom. She's a television personality. She's she's one of the sought after experts in the world on negotiation. And it's a remarkable journey. And I'm curious, have you done anything specifically that you would share with us to work on your self-confidence? Because you are, at least externally, a very strong, very confident woman. But now I'm picturing this little girl who's half Asian getting bullied at school. I'm picturing this mom running around the house with 3 screaming babies at any given time in her early 20s, probably not in the best marriage at that time. I'm picturing this, precious lady at those times of her life. And then you flash forward and we have what we have in front of us right now. What have you done to change your confidence?
Oh, I mean, I always joke like that, I never leave my thoughts unsupervised.
Whoa, very good. What do you mean by that?
I try to make sure that I very much control the input of my thoughts, by listening to the right audiobooks, just always making sure I'm working on self-development and surrounding myself with the right people, defending my light with my life at all times.
Can you say that again? What did you say there? Say that again, please.
Oh, it's one of my mantras. I defend my light with my life.
I know it is, but I wanted them to hear it. So what do you mean when you say that?
I believe that I'm not going to say I believe, I know that we are beings of energy and that we are vibrational, beings. And I talked about this with John Gordon. I mean, it's so funny. I'd read The Energy Bus years ago. And then when Erwin introduced us, I was like, I know I must have manifested that because I had read his book so long ago. And, I'm very, very conscious about keeping my vibrational energy at a certain level so that I'm always attracting, because I know that like attracts like, and that you have to keep your vibrational energy at a certain level. Otherwise, I'm conscious of it, dipping or negative thoughts coming into my life. I think, well, you better get rid of that unless you want more of that coming in, so how can I pivot this right now? What can I be listening to? What can I be looking at? What can I do to be pivoting that? It's not that I never have bad thoughts, or I never have bad people, or I never have, dark, times or whatever. I mean, everybody does, because we are human beings. Right. I'm just conscious of it now. I'm aware of when it happens, and I have an arsenal of tools that I use to go to combat it now.
I love it. See, awareness of our thoughts helps them lose their power over us. And it's such a critical key that you've just said. Just being aware of your thoughts helps the negative ones lose their power over you. I just interviewed an MMA fighter named Dustin Poirier, and I said, because it comes to emotions, the way the world works, everybody, just so you kind of understand how you can change what she's describing, is it's not the events in our life that define our lives. It's the meaning we attach to them. So what happens is an event takes place, a conversation, a meeting, a failure, a setback, whatever you think it is. You attach a meaning to it. That gives you an emotion. And based on an emotion, you take an action. So if you can go all the way back and attach the right meaning to an event, that will change the emotion you experience and change the action you take. And I was asking this fighter, he just beat Conor McGregor. I said, do you get scared and have anxiety and worry before you get into the octagon? He goes, every time. Still fearful for my life, afraid, worried. He said, those thoughts never go away. But he said, they do become more familiar. And he becomes more familiar with those emotions, more familiar with those thoughts. And then he's in control of them. They're not in control of him. You don't have to believe everything you think, everybody. And this idea that Rebecca just gave you, that is absolute truth, that your vibrational frequency, the energy level that you're moving at in your life, is deeply affected by the emotions you're experiencing and the meanings you attach. So please be conscious of that. She's 1,000,000,000% right about that. I'm curious, because you actually are a woman, and about 65% of my audience are female, is getting what you want, negotiation influence, is that gender neutral, or are there some differences that impact women that they need to be conscious of in negotiating what they want in any area of their life, including just the terms of their life that they want?
That is such a good question. And because the majority of my negotiating experience in a formal setting was in a high net worth divorce context, I have a lot of data actually in this. And so I'm going to actually kind of, use that in my answer. And I've represented billionaires, high net worth people, CEOs, all, celebrities, all sorts of people. And so what I'm going to give you is, I think, pretty good data. I've represented thousands of people in both genders in all walks of life. And here's the thing. Men are actually much better at separating their emotions from the transaction at the time of the negotiation. At the time of the negotiation itself, they look at the negotiation as a business deal. And they can literally just, okay, here's what we're dealing with right now. At the time of the negotiation for a woman, because of the way our brains are wired, there's all kinds of stuff going on in the brain. We are wired up that our emotions are actually attached to everything that we do. It's how we are built. It's, in a lot of ways, a very good thing about women. It makes us horrible at negotiating in a lot of ways. And I'm saying this as a woman. And so in a divorce setting, for example, the woman is sitting in front of a husband or a soon-to-be ex-husband thinking, doesn't it mean something to you that I, raised your children or gave up my life for you or did all these things for you? And the man is just literally going, how much is this going to cost me? And that's it. He's not seeing that, all those other things. He's just not at that moment. Not to say he's not going to go home and not think about, geez, I'm sad because my marriage is over or whatever, but he's not thinking about it at that moment.
Interesting.
They just have the ability to put emotions in a different box at that time.
Very interesting.
It's just how men are built compared to how women are built.
Would your advice to women be to be more cognizant of trying to minimize emotion in that business environment or a negotiation?
So how I have handled this for women, for all people, is preparation really is the key. And so how much you prepare it, prior to really, really helps a lot. By having, the research, you've done the research for both sides. You've You've taken a look at what your risk assessment is. Should I move forward with this? What is my best case scenario? What is my worst case scenario? What will my first offer be? What is my walkaway point? What is my leverage? When should I present it? Where should the negotiations take place? How can I keep my emotions out of it? And the more you can do all of that kind of preparation before you even walk into the room, the less emotion you will feel at that, on the day of the actual negotiation.
That's really good. I believe that's true for both, but if you are more emotionally inclined, if you're a man who's got, more emotionally inclined, or if you're a woman, and in your case, you're telling me that that's typically the case, that women will attach more emotion to something, preparation does reduce emotion. So it's a sales thing.
And anticipating what the arguments are going to be, anticipating, hey, listen, the argument from the other side is probably going to be this. And a lot of times what I tell people to do is maybe right out of the gate say, I'm anticipating you are going to argue this, and here's why your argument doesn't have merit. Like, bring it right up and shoot it down, because that will take the wind out of their sails. Sometimes that's a great strategy.
And by the way, when you're talking about negotiation, to me, that's sales and marketing too. So for those of you that are, you go, well, negotiation doesn't apply to me. Every sale you're doing is a negotiation. So taking objections away early that they were going to give you minimizes them. Preparation reduces your emotion. Highest vibrational frequency is the most influential. Most certain person influences the less certain person in almost every conversation in life, whether that's marriage, you and your kids. My daughter's getting a car today. She wasn't supposed to get a car for 2 weeks. She's paying for it. She was more certain she was going to pay for that sucker than I was that she wasn't. And she's driving today to get that car. So even in parent-daughter relationships, the most certain person influences the less. So these apply across the board. I want to flip the script on you now, though. So that's what women should be doing. For the men that are listening to this, if you're going into a negotiation with a woman, so now I want you to represent the men. Take your legal hat, and now you're representing the man. This could be a sales call, a boardroom, a business negotiation, a courtroom, whatever it might be. If you're a man and you're going to be interacting with a woman, it sounds to me like you think sometimes those negotiations are different because of the way that you believe they're wired. I'm only taking your word for it and your data. What advice would you give to a man who's negotiating with a woman?
Well, sometimes you do need to be a little bit more compassionate and a little bit more sensitive. I actually had I have a really interesting story for you here.
Okay.
I was representing a guy who may or may not have been a narcissist, by the way. He was, owned one of the largest development companies in the state at the time. And we were at the end of a very long day. He was looking at paying a lot of money in alimony over the course of the lifetime of the alimony. It would have ended up to be several $1 million. And at the end of the night, the mediator came into the room and said, I have a very odd request. The wife said that she will waive alimony completely if he will go over into the room and sit with her alone and apologize to her sincerely for the way that he treated her throughout the marriage.
Wow.
And do you know that he wanted to say no? He was like, no, I'm not going to do it. He was like, no, I'd rather pay the alimony. And I'm his lawyer thinking, oh, here, for sure, he's coming back at me, next week, going to be pissed off at me for not making him do this. So I'm like, no, you're going over there. And you're
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Did he?
So I kicked his butt and made him go over there and do it. And so he went over there and he apologized. And she actually did. She waived alimony. It was like,
that's crazy.
Yeah.
That's wacky. See, yeah. I think that a lot of people in sales or marketing, or even if you're a personal trainer, whatever it is, I think too many people are one-trick ponies. They can attract one type of person. They can win negotiations with one type of person. And that limits your ability to scale your business, scale your life, be influential. I know as a young man, most of the people that liked how I talked, spoke, got involved with me were young, testosterone filled, former athletes, competitive type, crazy people. And as I got a little further along in my life and my business career, I started to become rather more conscious of what you've described, which is that expressing other parts of my own personality, upping my game, being able to express emotions that resonate with people that are older than me, younger than me, wired differently than me, different gender than me, different sexual preference than me, different faith than me. And it's to the extent that you begin to be conscious of that, like Rebecca's saying, that gives you influence in your life. And to me, influence, if you're a good person, is the difference you're making in the life. So if you really want to make a difference in the world, you got to get good at what she's describing. Just such good stuff. By the way, I won't ever forget that story. That's super good.
Yeah.
And by the way, that lady was crazy.
It's like, how much is an apology worth to you? Is it worth $2 million?
Evidently an awful lot. And so on that, I'm going to shift back for a second because I'm just curious about this. It's stuff all is one thing to me. It's just life. It's just dealing with humans, right? Just to me, the reason I do the show, the reason I'm a curious person. I surround my people ask me all the time, well, what are your friends like? I would say in general, my friends are just curious people. None of them are wealthy or famous or successful or none of that stuff. I mean, some are, some aren't. What do they have in common? They're interesting. They're curious. They want to expand how they understand themselves and other people in life. And so that's why like today's so fascinating for me.
All right. Narcissistic phrases that contradict their behavior. Say one thing, do another. It's like, do as I say, not as I do, right? A lot of lip service. And the thing is, they're very, very charming. They come on very strong, very charming, very charismatic. It's very easy for them to make it look like they're saying the right thing, doing the right thing. Oh my gosh, yes, right. They completely know how to persuade. Excellent at persuading people to do things that they want them to do. And they can get people to do these things for years and years and years, but it contradicts their behavior. And it can really cause cognitive dissonance in people. And so when you're going to negotiate with them or deal with them or live with them, especially if it's for long periods of time, it can be quite confusing. It can cause you to be off balance. It can cause you to be off kilter, which is exactly what they want. They want you to be under their control. And that's why it's really important to be able to spot this, so that you can almost start seeing it as a third party and go, okay, I see what's happening here, and not be so taken in by it. You can almost start looking at it as if you're an observer and not be under that spell. All right. So the first one is they'll say, I don't want to argue with you. I don't want to argue with you. But meanwhile, they're constantly arguing with you. I'll give you an example. You just say the most benign of things, and they'll be interrupting you. They'll say, why are you bringing that up now? They'll say, you're yelling when you're not yelling. They will not give you information that you simply asked for. They give you a hard time when you want to do the most simple of things. You ask about going to a restaurant and they say, I don't care, and everything is difficult, but yet they say, I don't want to argue. I don't want to argue. Or it's in the same vein, they'll say, I'm not mad. I'm not mad. You can tell that they're mad. You can tell that they're angry. You can tell that there's rage underneath the surface, but yet I'm not mad. And it's so confusing and frustrating because they're raging on you, but they're not mad. That's one. Another one is, I love you, but yet a lot of their behavior is not congruent with a person who loves another person. A person who loves another person would not degrade a person, would not put another person down. Would care about a person if they're sick, for example. When a person is sick, they want to take care of them. They want to be there for them. They don't act callous toward them. But then they say, I love you. When a person is going through something, they don't make sure that they're as horrible as possible. But this is what they do. And then they say, I love you. They say things like, if you're not even on a diet or something, you'll be at a party and they'll say, oh, so-and-so's not going to have any, she's on a diet, even if you're not on a diet, because they want you to lose weight or whatever. Oh, I love you. Things like that. That's not loving. Or they'll say something that's super mean and those, oh, it's just joking. That sort of thing. It's not, that totally contradicts behavior. The next one is, I'm your biggest supporter. I'm your biggest fan. But yet they don't come to things that you're doing. They make sure to interrupt big meetings that you might be having at work. They aren't happy for you when you get promoted, or they'll say you didn't really do anything to get promoted, or that wasn't that great of a thing, or they kind of put you down, they poo-poo it in some way. But I'm your biggest fan. I am the one who supports you the most, but yet what you're doing isn't all that great, but I'm your biggest fan. Totally contradicts the way they act. Very confusing. Very confusing. The next one is, you're my best friend. And you're thinking, how could I be your best friend when you treat me the way that you treat me? How would one be as a best friend when you're degrading this other person, when you're telling this person that you don't want to be in a relationship every other day? I could take you or leave you. Every other day is something else, but you're my best friend. But then the next day is, I don't trust you, that sort of thing. But you're my best friend. It's so hot and cold. It's so all over the place, but you're my best friend. That's, crazy stuff. They're like so all over the place. You're my best friend. The next one is, it's because I care about you. They'll say something or do something like, I gave you this piece of exercise equipment because you need to lose weight. And it's because I care about you. They do something that's degrading, definitely humiliating, and it's just because I care about you. I have a cousin who, her husband gave her this abdominizer. I'm sure it's definitely not on the market anymore, but it was like some kind of, she was like tiny at the time. I mean, teeny, and he was a massive, huge narcissist. And he gave her that for her 30th birthday. And that was, her only gift. That was the only thing he gave her. It was because he cared about her. So that's the kind of thing I mean. Like, it's because I care about you. That's the next one. The next one is, things have never been that bad. They'll rage on you. They will go insane. One day it's the worst thing in the world. The relationship is in the toilet. They're recording you. I need to record this conversation because you lie all the time, because you're delusional, because you're a narcissist, this, that, and the other thing. And then the next day, I don't know what you're talking about. Things have never been that bad between us. The relationship has never been that bad. It's like they don't remember because of the way their brain works. They shift from one to the next. They literally have a form of amnesia. That's the super confusing part, because the way when they treat you in a certain way and you're still like in massive PTSD about the way they've treated you. They literally do not remember. And that's why they don't have any empathy about it, because they just don't remember. The next one is you need help. And they'll say these things like they genuinely think like they're helping you or something. It contradicts all other types of their behavior. You need because of your mental problems, right? And they genuinely think that they're like caring for you. It's so contradictory. This stuff is not okay. I just want you to know that when you're living in this high and low all the time, it really can cause this trauma bond. It makes it much harder to leave. It's just not okay. I want you to put that in the comments. I want you to start thinking about it. And I want you to start recognizing that it's not okay. Not okay. And if you guys have seen this, I want you to tell me that you've seen it. And I want you to tell me the kinds of things that you've seen. Put that in the comments. I'd love to know the kinds of things that you guys have seen too.
Wow. So what happened? What did you do?
I tried to find a way.
That's the question, I guess.
How did I shift? I didn't shift then. This was 2008. It took another 8 years. And I think about it, I've never said it like that. I realized there's a lot of stuff that happened in between. But man, like my marriage fell apart. I wasn't a great parent. The business was always up and down. I was looking at bankruptcy like 9 months in and somehow got through it. But I was always on the bubble for like 6 years on the bubble of this business of almost losing it, keeping it around. Somehow it works out, like payroll, rent, everything. And in that process, man, lost the marriage, lost all that. I was living in a 500 square foot studio apartment behind the house of one of my front desk or one of my trainer's girlfriends. Very weird, power dynamic. At work, I'm the boss, but at the house, like him and her, the boss. And I was like, my kid slept on an air mattress next to my bed. It was a very different experience of life that I ever thought I'd be in. I didn't really like myself too much, man, to be honest. I wasn't a fan of Anthony, oddly. And went through that whole journey of up and down. And then unfortunately in 2014, April 15th, I lost my mom. When I was 14 years old, she'd been diagnosed with MS.
And she had a your adoptive mom or the one?
My adoptive mom. Okay. Yeah, my adoptive mom. And when she passed away, like I had this really interesting conversation with self and one with her before she passed of the reality of what I've been able to accomplish past what statistically I should have been and how much of her as a human showing up responsible for that taking place. And I made 2 promises. One promise was I'm going to figure my life out again. I somehow got to figure this thing. I can't keep doing this. And then 2, when I do, I'm going to help people do the same. I didn't know how I was going to do it, to be honest. I didn't know the speaking world existed. I knew none of this. I, at the time, was a gym owner. I was like, I'm a gym owner. I'm going to get people in shape and help them make their lives better. And what ended up happening was, God put some interesting things in my life. I got this massive contract for $250,000, which was $220,000 in profit from a large company I was consulting for. My gym lease was up, so I didn't have to renew the lease. I happened across this world like 2 months later in June of speaking and coaching. So I'm like, man, maybe I go out in the world and I tell my story and I find a way to get my life on track while teaching. Now, that's not the best recipe for success. You don't teach what you're still learning. You know what I mean? Like it's not the most ideal. So it took me 2 more years before I finally woke up and like not loved. I realized I was still not in love with myself, burning through my money, just doing my thing. And I had this moment of like, I don't like me. And this is where the shift took place. I remember looking in the mirror one day on New Year's Eve day and like, I don't like this guy. I would never want my daughter to be with a guy like me. I'd never want my sons to be like me. I would not want, my God to see me because he wouldn't let me into heaven. My mom would be pissed looking at this guy. I was like, something's got to change. And I realized that I was the common denominator in all my problems. Me, I was the one experiencing them all. So if I'm the common denominator, what if I look at me and I shift something? Now, shift wasn't the idea. It was like change. If I change something, and I don't think a person has to change consistently and completely because who I am in my core, I'm kind of the same guy I was in high school, to be quite honest. But there's certain parts of how I operate and how I show up and what I have integrity in and what I fight for that are vastly different as a human. And that's more of the shift. You make that 1 degree shift that changes everything around you. And so that was where it took place. And I started doing things where I cut off women. because I didn't want to spend time just, like running around doing dumb stuff, with multiple partners. I cut off certain friends that weren't serving me. I started taking up new hobbies of reading and going and hiking. I started doing things. Now, at the time, it was very unintentional. I didn't know really what I was building. And I think people do that sometimes, to start doing things without really realizing what we're doing. Since then, I've made a lot of different adjustments to my shifts because I'm like, I don't know if that's the path to go on. So I've made some adjustments. But fast forward 10 months from that moment in New Year's Day in 2016, I got back with my ex-wife after 3 years divorce. We have an amazing marriage now. Kids have a present father. I've been able to figure out, like, not only my craziness, but how to solve that problem for myself and people. And so now when I work with individuals, I'm helping them make those shifts in their life. And it could be everything from, I want to shift to make more money in my business. Great. We go and look at the strategy of the business and the strategy of them. Or I'm like, hey, I want to be a better man so I can actually maybe get a great relationship. Phenomenal. Let's take a look at what that identity looks like to do that. Let's see how we shift to that. So I go and I use what's called the shift method to plot this course and set action towards it. It's pretty simple. It's a lot of depth, but that's the simple way to look at it. And in doing so, man, I've been able to make good on promise one. Like, I was able to get to the point of, like, just being great in my own life. I'm happy, healthy. So I made promise one to my mom. Good. Now I'm doing promise two. And I've been doing it for, shoot, man, since 2016. Now we're going on 5 years, like really, really digging into doing it. But
So
what's
I
beautiful
just
about it.
want to point something out,
Yeah.
because
Go
you're
ahead.
saying it without you haven't said it exactly in this way, but I've always said that there is a redemptive power in just making a choice.
Oh, hell yeah. I
Like,
fully agree. Made this decision to it.
literally, you just made a decision. You literally just decided
Mhm.
that this isn't going to be me anymore. I'm going to do it differently.
Yeah.
This is not my story. Like, in that moment that you made that decision, that's when you were able to, I mean, I honestly believe the universe just starts to go, okay, this is the direction we're going, and everything starts to line up for you in that way. But you have to start by making that decision.
Yeah. And it is hard though. I mean, because you're pretty much saying, I'm going to go out and do things against what my words have said to certain people, how I may not be accepted by certain people. And in doing so, you have to like, realize you're going to have to, like, kill off that old person. Like, the cost of a new life is your old one. It just is what it is. And it's
Yeah,
hard.
I always found it really interesting that the word decide actually has side as part of it, which
Kill.
in Latin means to kill.
Yeah.
So you actually are killing off
The other side. Yeah. It's
everything else.
100%. And people, that's a fearful, scary thing to do. And it's funny, at the time, I didn't think I was doing that. I was just tired of what I was doing. I was fed up. People are like, well, what was the thing? I was just fed up with living what I was living. I didn't feel good inside. And if you can give yourself permission, which is what you pretty much are saying, decide. One part of it's a choice to do that. The other one's giving yourself, before that even happens, giving yourself permission to improve. Because most people, they'll see it and they'll tuck it away. I don't want anybody to see that. They don't give themselves permission to feel it, to own it, to accept it. Therefore, they never make that choice. They don't decide, and that part of their life stays there.
Yeah, but you also have to, in some place in your psyche, have to feel like you're worthy of that. Have to feel like, because I think sometimes people, they get stuck in these places because they
Mhm.
don't feel like they're good enough on some subconscious level
100%.
to have a good relationship, to have a good life, to have
Yeah.
money, to
Yeah.
be a good spouse.
Yeah. Especially if you've done crazy things. If you've done some things that are difficult, it's even harder. But I unfortunately don't think that worthiness exists inside of a lot of people who start the process. I think that there's some inherent belief that if I just do things, it'll just work out. I just know this is right. I don't know why I'm just going to do it, and we'll step into those things. The crazy thing is doing the action and seeing the outcome creates that sense of confidence and worthiness. And I think if we don't know it's there, we need to realize it can be there by simply doing the thing. That's all it is. It's not a matter of starting out saying, I am worthy of a great relationship, therefore I'm going to go fight for it. Because the fight's going to die if you don't believe you're worthy, right? So it's like a weird oxymoron. But here's what I do believe. If you take that small step, when you don't feel worthy, when you don't feel confident, that creates an outcome that gives you worthiness. or an outcome that feels confidence, because it's an investment bias. If I invest in something, I want to return, right? Money, I give investment, I want to return. As humans, the investment towards a direction, the return is confidence, self-esteem, joy, worthiness. And if you sit back and wait for that bank to fill up without putting money into it, you're sadly mistaken. You got to go and make that investment. And a lot of it's going to be an unconfident, unworthy action that returns a sense of worthiness and confidence.
Oh, that is so true and so good. And I mean, honestly, I mean, I remember when I started my law practice and I went out on my own, and I had taken over, a friend of mine had a few, like a handful of clients, and she was moving. And so I took over her clients. And I remember saying to my best friend, I, I'm so afraid that I'm going to finish off her clients and then never get one of my own. And like, I signed this lease and I got a paralegal and all this stuff. And like, what's going to happen? And she goes, "Oh, that's not going to happen. Your problem's going to be that you have too many clients." And I was like, "I don't know. I hope so." And so I just did it. And I remember meeting with my first client of my own going, "Okay, look, I got one," and then thousands of clients later,
Snowball,
I
yeah.
do feel so much better. I mean, and I don't even have to practice anymore
Even
because I'm
question it.
doing,
It's just who you are.
because
Yeah,
I'm
you
doing
know.
other things, bigger things,
Yeah.
better thing, more. I'm helping more people around the globe, and so, but it's exactly like what you said. I had to just take that step. And there's a saying like leap and the net will appear, and I
Yeah.
definitely think that's so true.
And you know what it is? You just described what I shifted. If I was to ask you how much of that person still exists in you, you'd be like, not much.
Oh, the
Like,
person before of like,
yeah.
oh, I'm afraid I'll never have a client or whatever doesn't even
No,
exist.
right?
In
Complete new
fact, I'm
identity.
100% certain that if I stopped doing all my YouTube stuff and stopped training people around the globe on negotiations and stopped doing the things that I'm doing now and
Yeah.
just said, all I'm going to do is practice law, I would sit down in my chair and within a week, I would have too many clients.
Yeah.
Is something I'm certain of.
Different. Now that's like a complete different identity, right? And what's
Completely.
crazy is you just described it. You started, you did the actions. Over time, you start becoming that human. I tell people what you create creates you. Your process of creating this life, no matter what the actions were, created this person you are, and you can't go backwards now. Like, it's just who you are now. That's the secret. That's it. There's not magic. That is really it. There's a lot that goes into making that happen, but that's the beauty of the whole thing. To make
It's
a
so
shift, just comes from
true.
actions.
It's so true. You could never go back. I mean, I think of it as like, remember how in the story Alice in Wonderland, when she ate the one pill, she was like way too big for the house and her arms and legs
Mhm.
were coming out of the house,
Yes.
like that house doesn't fit you anymore.
Yeah.
You're expanding, you're growing, and you don't even feel it until you look back and you go, wow, look at what
Different.
I've done. Look at what I've been able to accomplish. Right.
And what's crazy is I just finished my book and I have a quote by Lewis Carroll in there, which is from the Alice in Wonderland. And it says, when she came back from Wonderland, somebody says, "What happened?" And she goes, there's no need even going back there because I'm not the same person anymore. Like, it literally is like, she's like, there's no need to go back and think about that person because that's not who I am now. 3 days, 2 or 3 days, right? And I realized in that moment reading that, I'm like, because it's a matter of how those actions happen in your life and what took place and how you responded to them that created this new person. So it's funny because this happens to us all day, every day, but we're doing it unintentionally. We're riding the wave, and you don't realize that you can get a surfboard and control it much better. So when you do what you did and you realize that, okay, I've outgrown this house, right? And you choose, like, okay, I want to be this person. It's just choosing to get a surfboard instead of just floating in the wave with nothing.
Yeah, I love that. That's so beautiful. I didn't even know that you had the Alice in Wonderland quote in your book. How about that? Like,
Hey,
just
it all worked out.
synchronicity going on over here.
Yeah.
Okay, so you know what? They do know what they're doing. You know that they know what they're doing. You know that they know what they're doing is wrong. And I'm going to prove it to you by the end of this video. So, first of all, how do they know what they're doing is wrong? You know that they know because how do they start off the relationship with you? They don't start off the relationship with you by treating you poorly, do they? No. They start off by the charm, whether it's a business relationship, whether it's a personal relationship, it doesn't really matter. They turn it on, they lay it on thick. They've studied people. They know how to look like amazing. They lay it on and look, like they're absolutely perfect for you in absolutely every way. So they know how to look perfect and wonderful and charming. They start off by looking like that. They know that that's how they're supposed to be with people. And so here they come, being wonderful, absolutely wonderful. They know that that's how they need to look in order to get you charmed, right? So that's what looking wonderful looks like. That's how they start off the relationship, looking wonderful. Let me get that for you. Let me help you. Let me be as wonderful as I can be. So that's proof number one. I know that in order to get you to think that I'm wonderful, I need to seem wonderful to you. So that's number one. And number two is if you catch them doing something that they're not supposed to do, what do? Lying and denying, right? I mean, if they didn't know it was wrong, why would they lie and deny it? Obviously, they would just say what they were doing, but they know that they have to lie and deny about it. That's, again, proof that they know their behavior is wrong, proof that they know it's unacceptable. Because if they didn't know what they were doing was unacceptable, they would just tell you, right? So there again, proof. And again, with the projection and deflection, same thing. You catch them in a lie, or you catch them doing something, they project and deflect, same thing. Same thing with their double lives. They all lead these double lives. They have this sort of face that they don't show people, and then they have this face that they show people, this mask that's like they want the world to see, and then they've got this other sort of very insecure side to them. There's a whole video that I have, by the way, on what happens when you catch a narcissist in a lie, which you can definitely check out if you'd like. And that's another whole story. Another thing is that they do know that they have to behave at times, and they behave when they have to. That's another form of proof that they do know that their behavior is wrong, that they do know when their behavior is unacceptable, because they behave when they have to. And it's, it's very, very manipulating. And gaslighting, by the way, is another form of proof that definitely shows that they know that their behavior is unacceptable and their behavior is wrong, because they are using gaslighting as a form of manipulation, and they are very much deliberately using that as a form of trying to get somebody to believe that their reality is something different than what it actually is, for their own benefit, so that they can have what they want, so that they can project and deflect away from whatever it is that they're doing, so that they can get away with things, or whatever it is that they want to get away with, because they're manipulative. A lot of times, if they're smart enough, especially the covert ones, they can see and mirror what people are doing and behave in a way that they can see is supposed to be, oh, I'm supposed to act empathetic. I don't actually care what's happening in somebody's life, but I can pretend, and I can see that that's how empathetic people act. So I can mirror that and make it look like I actually care. And so that can become very, very dangerous too. But they know that that's like supposed to be how they act. But then when push comes to shove, you'll find out the real story, and you'll see oh, like they didn't actually care. And then you'll see like that they knew that their behavior wasn't what it was supposed to be or whatever. And then again, you'll see that they're proof that they knew their behavior wasn't what it was supposed to be. And again, you'll see where they know that their behavior isn't what it's supposed to be, but they don't care a lot of the time. You will see a lot of times they do tell on themselves too, by the way that they speak, by the way that they act, by the way that they write their text messages, by the way they write their emails. They can't help but do that a lot of times. You know, it's really interesting when I teach people how to put together their strategy and their leverage in the SLAY program. I always tell people they are horrible and heinous to deal with, but they're actually very simple in the sense that their playbook is kind of the same. The patterns are very, very similar. They're not all that difficult to figure out once you have figured out that you are dealing with that personality type. They're actually pretty simple because they're all driven by one thing, and that is that narcissistic supply, because they do need that narcissistic supply. That is their food, it is their lifeblood, it is their oxygen. But there are many, many examples of how they do know that their behavior is wrong because they can behave when they want to, because they do all the time, especially at the beginning of the relationship, how they got you in the first place. And, you know, when you're dealing with them in court, you can see them behaving in front of the judge. You can see them behaving with lawyers. I mean, you know, you see them behaving when they need to all the time. And that's your proof.